Today I'd like to talk about the topic of sensitivity analysis. What sensitivity analysis is recognizing that we're dealing with often uncertain numbers or the future that we really can't make sure judgments about. And the numbers we're working with are approximations, are guesses, and they could be wrong. And what we want to do is to recalculate our problems with small variations of the numbers to see how the answer changes, see how sensitive the answer is to errors in our choice of numbers. Now, in particular, we do that by changing one number at a time. We keep all other numbers constant, just change one, and see how sensitive the answer is to those changes. That's sensitivity analysis. Let's look at a problem. The Discordian Church of Waterloo is saving to buy all the privately held property in the world. So we have a kind of a strange organization here, but that's their tenant. And they figure it'll cost approximately 1.5 times 10 to the 13th dollars. A very large amount of money. And they can save $10,000 per year. How many years will it take them to accumulate this amount at an annual interest rate of 12%? So the idea is they're collecting money, they're going to save it up and then buy all private property in the world. And we want to assess the sensitivity of this time to changes in the interest rate and the annual amount saved. So this is a classic problem of having an uncertain future. We don't really know whether our investments will earn 12% interest. Sometimes they'll earn more, sometimes they'll earn less. We don't really know for sure how it will average out. Similarly, we don't really know, especially in a volunteer organization like this, whether that will be $10,000 per year. It might be more, it might be less. Or in fact, we might be able to strive for getting more donations or strive for getting a larger interest rate in order to reach our goal of saving up the 1.5 times 10 to the 13th dollars. So the first thing we do is to calculate this for the 12% interest in $10,000 per year. We'd also calculate variations on that. Now we know how to do this kind of calculation. I won't go into it in detail, but I will show you the results. Here we have a table I've set up. And in the middle of the table are the actual figures given. The 12% interest and $10,000 per year amount saved. But in each of these half tables, I've varied, in this case, the interest rate, in this case, the annual amount, while keeping the other figure constant. So here I'm varying the interest rate from 1.2% to 120% while keeping the annual amount at $10,000. Here I'm varying the annual amount from $1,000 to $100,000 while keeping the interest rate at 12%. And we can see how the number of years it takes to save up the 1.5 times 10 to the 13th dollars changes. With the numbers we're given, it takes 167 years. If our interest rate is substantially lower, it could take us up to $1,400 a year. If our interest rate is substantially higher, perhaps only $27 per year. Similarly, there will be changes to the number of years it takes to save up our large amount of money by saving different amounts per year. But now if you look at these figures, I've taken sort of ranges here. And it seems pretty clear that the way the number of years changes with respect to interest is more dramatic, is quicker than it is with the amount of money we save each year. It doesn't really matter how much we save. It's still going to take between 150 and 200 years, no matter how much we save, pretty much. However, making relatively small changes in the amount of interest we earn makes a pretty dramatic difference. Now we can chart this too. Here's a little graph I put together. Along the bottom of the graph are the number of years, ranging from 0 to 325. And along the left side is the interest rate. Along the right side is the annual amount. And I've got as dots the numbers I've calculated. But these dots allow us to draw a graph of how the interest rate changes the number of years and how the annual amount changes the number of years. For example, this is for interest rate. I'll connect my dots. And the other set of dots are for the annual amount. Again, you can see dramatically that changes in the interest rate within a certain range anyhow has dramatic differences in the number of years for which the goal will be achieved, whereas changes in the annual amount has relatively little difference. We're in a very small range here in changes. So with respect to our problem, changes in the interest rate are more important. It's more sensitive to changes in the interest rate. So if perhaps we're giving advice to the treasurer for this organization, we'd say put your efforts into getting as high an interest rate as possible and just perhaps less effort into raising the amount each year. Here's another example. Slightly different principle in this example. Clem's considering buying a car. He can choose a Ford or a Volvo. And we're given a bunch of figures for each of these purchases in terms of life, first cost, and maintenance, and so forth. We've seen this kind of analysis before. Note, however, that the maintenance, gas and oil insurance depend on his mileage. The more he drives, obviously, the more gas he spends. The more gas he buys, the car that's cheaper on gas, the Ford here, is going to be a better purchase. So the more he drives, the Ford's going to turn out to be better on average than the Volvo. We're given an interest rate and an estimate of his mileage per year of 10,000 kilometers. So the idea here is that for this particular mileage, one of these vehicles is going to be best. We know how to figure that out. But depending on that mileage, it may change. So we can do that calculation. And we see here in the middle of this is our sort of default estimate of 10,000 kilometers per year. And given that mileage, we have the cost for the Ford and the Volvo. We know how to do that calculation. And we see that the Volvo is in fact best, it's cheapest. This would be an annual worth comparison, annual cost comparison. We see that the Volvo is cheapest at the given figure. But we see that actually they're not too far apart. And as the mileage increases around between $11,000 and $12,000, suddenly the Ford is cheapest. So we actually have a more comprehensive answer to our problem here. It says that if the mileage is less than 12,000 kilometers per year, the Volvo is best. If it's more than 12,000 kilometers per year, the Ford's best. Now this can be important information. When Clem was asked what his expected mileage would be, he might not have thought it through very, very well. He might have just said off the top of his head, well, 10,000 kilometers. In which case, the Volvo would have been recommended. But if Clem is presented with this information and realizes how close to his given figure is this threshold at which the Ford becomes better, then that justifies more careful inspection of what his mileage actually is. And when he inspects it more carefully, when he perhaps considers how far it is to work, how many times a year he drives to work, or checks the odometer in his car and see how many kilometers he's had his old car, he's put on it in the years he's had it, he may come up with a better estimate which actually exceeds that threshold. Maybe it'd be 15,000 or 20,000, in which case the Ford would be better. So this is slightly different than the last case, where we're looking at which of the components to the calculation was more important. In this case, we're looking at how the actual decision can change with respect to something that's variable, in this case the mileage. And giving that information to the decision maker so he has a better perspective as to how he should choose these parameters and how much study he should put into to specifying one for which the decision will be based, on which the decision will be based. So that's the idea of sensitivity analysis. It's important. In fact, we've ignored it up to now. We've been assuming that future values are, as given, are known. But of course, in life, we never know anything for sure. Everything's an estimate. And it's important to know how robust, how sure you are of a decision. And so in just about every calculation you do, it's really important to do sensitivity analysis, to take your average or expected values, use them in a calculation, make a decision, but then vary them a little bit. Vary them to the extremes that you think might in fact be possible, and see if the decision changes. And that can make you either sure that you're doing the right thing, or make you recognize that there's important consequences to perhaps some approximations that you've made, and it's worthwhile looking at them more carefully. Thank you.